9:20, as we just heard, Brexit architect Nigel Farage reveals why he thinks Boris must go. Tory MP Peter Bone, former ministers Edwina Currie and David Mallor, journalist and former advisor to Boris Johnson Tim Montgomery, and Welsh political commentator Richard Taylor will clash at 9:25. We've got Spiked Online's Brendan O'Neill at 9:40, our very own Neil Oliver reacting from Scotland at 9:50, and best-selling author Lionel Shriver is uncancelled at 10:40. And I'll reveal how tomorrow's newspapers cover the vote too the moment they land. This is Dan Wootton Tonight. Let's go. Now, tonight is a historic one in British politics. In moments, we will find out whether the man elected in a landslide in 2019 is about to be booted out. Here we go.
As returning officer, that 359 ballots were cast, no spoiled ballots, that the vote in favour of having confidence in Boris Johnson as leader was 211 votes, and the vote against was 148 votes. And therefore, I can announce that the Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
You just heard, and we'll stay on the room actually, announced by the 1922 committee chairhead Graham Brady. Boris Johnson has won tonight's confidence vote among Tory MPs. 211 voted for Boris, 148 voted against. So that means as long as the rules aren't changed by these treacherous rebels, he can face no leadership challenge at all for the next 12 months. Now, I know the corrupt media in this country won't let the issue rest. In fact, they will not rest until Boris is deposed. But I truly believe the country must now move on from Partygate, move on from this ongoing Westminster psychodrama, and focus on what really matters. And that's the cost of living crisis, that's rescuing the economy, that's solving the housing crisis, and that's cutting taxes. If Boris achieves all of that, then he has a chance at the next election. But the Tory party must not descend into civil war, or we'll end up facing a socialist coalition of Labour, the Lib Dems, the SNP and the Greens, which will destroy our great country. Now, we will get reaction from pro-Boris supporter Ben Houchen and anti-Boris, I think it's fair to say tonight, Nigel Farage, in just a moment. But first, instant reaction from my superstar panel. The Daily Express columnist Carol Malone is here tonight, alongside the senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the columnist for Conservative Home, Emily Carver. So, Carol Malone, 148 votes against. That means he has done percentage-wise as badly as Theresa May and also as badly as Margaret Thatcher versus Michael Heseltine in 1990. Your reaction?
I think Downing Street were hoping it would be under 100, because then that would stop a lot of the politicians and the media commentators from saying, you know, that he's dead man walking, you know, he's in power, but he's in office, but he has no power. I think this is a kind of a tricksy number for him. Yes, he's won, and yes, he can't face a challenge. But, you know, all he needed was 40-odd MPs to go against him, and that would mean that, you know, if there's a vote goes to the Commons, if these politicians really want to be difficult, the ones that voted against them, they can vote down things that the government would want passing. And that puts him in a very dangerous position. I think he would have hoped for less. I thought it would be less, actually. I thought it might be under 100. I'm quite surprised at that.
Emily Carver, your reaction. 148 Tory MPs voted against Boris Johnson tonight.
Well, it's not a good result for Boris Johnson at all, by no means. I think he was hoping, and some of his loyalists were hoping, that it would be a number far lower than that. You know what? My overriding feeling is one of sadness. Where do we go from here? I don't think anyone wants a Prime Minister limping on with colleagues who simply don't support him. I don't think the country wants a leadership election at this moment. Remember, there'll be ballots and second round of ballots and weeks of navel-gazing. That's not what people need right now either. And my overriding worry is that Boris Johnson will not last following this because he does not have the confidence of so many of his MPs. And I do worry that come the next general election, we may be facing what some call a progressive alliance in what my view would be an absolute nightmare for this country.
Well, it is an absolute nightmare. And Benjamin Butterworth, I have to say, I imagine you're rubbing your hands with glee tonight. I think this is disastrous for the country. I think it's unsettling. I think it's bad for the economy. But presumably because you want that socialist coalition in power, you think this is a great night.
Well, this is a terrible result for the PM and he should resign. Now, those aren't my words. Those are the words of Jacob Rees-Mogg when Theresa May had her confidence vote and got a higher proportion
but Theresa
than
May
Boris
didn't
Johnson
have a majority of MPs
tonight
to vote through her Brexit deal. You must see we're in a completely different situation. The Tories have an 80-seat majority.
Boris Johnson has got, I think, barely 60% of his MPs. Theresa May did better than that. If he were to match her, he would have needed to get 227 of his MPs to get the same share of his parliamentary party as she did, and he failed to do that. So by Jacob Rees-Mogg's own measurement, that's not enough to carry on. And the truth is that the people that voted in favour of him under this idea that he is an election winner, well, a very sophisticated poll recently suggested that they would lose all but 3 of the seats that give them the majority he currently has. And in reality, so long as the clowns are in charge of the circus, then this is going to continue to be a mess. And that's the situation the Tory MPs are in. And that's why, actually, I think Emily Carver just made a very good point, that his days are now numbers as Prime Minister.
Well, Carol, this is what the media have been saying all day long. I mean, if you switch on Sky News, if you switch on BBC News, if you switch on LBC, that's what they've been saying all day long. Actually, that's not how I feel. I feel now this vote gives Boris Johnson a year to turn the economy around, a year to cut taxes, a year to take us out of the pandemic, a year to cut the NHS waiting list. We need that as a country. We can't live in constant Westminster turmoil.
But you know what's going to happen? And this really upsets me. You know, do the rebels really hate Boris so much that they want to hand the keys to number 10, to Keir Starmer? Because that's what's going to happen here. Because, you know, I'm really glad we've avoided the leadership election. However, it's not going to stop various sections of the media. It's not going to stop certain MPs from banging on about this the way they banged on about Partygate. It's almost like, you know, it's no coincidence that this leadership vote came so close on the heels of Partygate. We've almost stopped talking about Partygate, and now we're going to be talking about this and dissecting this for weeks. And all of this at a time when we're in the worst cost of living crisis in living memory, and when, you know, there's a war raging in Europe on our doorstep. We need to have the government concentrating on looking after this country and ruling and bringing new policies in. We cannot have this because this now is going to go on for weeks with more MPs saying he should go. This is going to be like Partygate. It's going to drag on and drag on. And it really upsets me that they're doing this. And the voters in the end are going to say, oh, enough of this. And they're going to vote Labour in the next election. Because, Emily, this is what the media's wanted, death by 1,000 cuts. And I also put it to you that this is what Ramona's have wanted as well. And at some point, Emily, we have to say, let's put the country first. And the country voted for Boris Johnson in huge numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say that Boris Johnson galvanised huge support in areas of this country that never voted Conservative for generations, if not for the entirety of time that we've had this electoral system. He managed to galvanise support. He got Brexit through. He got support from people who would never even dream of voting Conservative before. This isn't the time for the Conservative Party to sort of reimagine a pre-2016 type of Conservative Party. Having said that, Boris Johnson does need to change tack. There are many people within the Conservative Party, many members, many voters, many people who voted Conservative for the first time, who aren't sure what exactly Boris Johnson stands for. And yes, Partygate has been a massive factor in this result this evening, but also many other things. They're confused. What does he stand for on the economy?
Exactly.
Is he a big statist or is he a small statist?
And that's what needs to be sorted out. But I think he needs a chance to do that. Emily Carver, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, they are my superstar panel. They are here for all of the analysis. all night on this breaking news that in tonight's confidence vote, Boris Johnson has won the support of 211 MPs, but in a concern for the Prime Minister, 148 of his own voted against. Percentage-wise, that means this is a worse confidence vote for Boris Johnson than John Major, than Theresa May, and even worse than Margaret Thatcher versus Heseltine back in 1990. Personally, I think these Tory rebels need to take a good, hard look at themselves and think what they're doing to the country. But let's get reaction now from Tees Valley, where Ben Houchin, a high-profile Boris backer and the Conservative mayor of Tees Valley, joins me. Of course, lots of very important red wall constituencies where Ben is, and he has the largest electoral mandate in the north of England. Ben, I know Boris has won. Your man has got over the line just, but this must be a very disappointing result for you.
I mean, it's just frustrating, Dan, that we're even here in the first place, isn't it? I mean, we've had 2 years of COVID. We've obviously delivered Brexit, and then we were starting to hopefully get back to life as normal. Yes, obviously the Prime Minister has questions to answer, and he has started to answer those and apologised around the Partygate and the drinks in Downing Street. But it just feels like this government just hasn't been allowed to get going because, you know, various people have various agendas post-COVID.
Indeed. And tell me about your area, Ben, because you've always been very clear that if Boris goes, the red wall goes. Do you still feel that tonight?
Well, all I can point to is the fact that the Prime Minister was up in Teesside again last week and he was still mobbed by members of the public. Everybody wanted a photograph with him. Everybody wanted to come and speak to him. You know, he still has that draw as a politician that no other politician has. And you often worry that, especially the Conservative Party, in a time where there isn't an opposition. I mean, Keir Starmer is as wet as they come. He's useless. He doesn't have anything that people in the red wall can understand or what he stands for. Well, what does the Conservative Party do? It often finds that it becomes its own opposition. And that's what, sadly, we're seeing today. And I think, unfortunately, we're going to see more of that as various people who have their own agendas within the party want to try and pull it apart. And ultimately, the people that will lose out is the general public, where we're trying to get on and deliver real things for real people. And it's just, unfortunately, we're going to get caught in that Westminster navel-gazing phase that, unfortunately, it feels like we're moving into.
So what does Boris Johnson need to do to win the party back?
I mean, it's a difficult thing to answer because, you know, from what I'm seeing from the outside, there are certain members of the parliamentary party that it didn't matter how big the majority was in this vote of confidence today. They were always going to reject that. They were always going to double down on the fact that they don't like him for various reasons. It's not just one reason. But I think what we need to do is concentrate and get the parliamentary party to understand what the public actually want. And I mean, it's frightening. I mean, even just today, we've had both people like Lord Adonis and Keir Starmer on a various different radio station this morning saying that they want to revisit Brexit and renegotiate with the EU. I mean, you know, you can just see what's coming down the road, and, you know, you can see the Remainers within the Conservative Party using this as an opportunity because they think that the party's going in the wrong direction, refusing to recognise that the country voted for Brexit. Only 2 years ago, the country voted for this Prime Minister with a massive, massive majority. And for those people in the party to pretend as if they would get a similar majority without Boris Johnson just do not understand the new politics. And it's frustrating, but like I say, I don't know what the actual answer is because it feels to me like this purgatory is probably here to stay for a while longer.
Ben Houchin, I want to ask you about the media too, because that's not something we talk about much in this country. But to me, as someone working in the media, I have watched for the past 7 months as they relentlessly use what is a relatively minor scandal in terms of what's now known as Partygate to hammer the Prime Minister night after night, day after day. It feels like the media in this country, the mainstream media in this country, the left wing, the liberal media in this country, the BBC, Sky News, all of that lot, they will not rest until Boris is out.
Yeah, I mean, I would slightly disagree, Dan, in that I think there were lots of people who had legitimate concerns and were genuinely deeply upset with some of the actions within Number 10. And it seems to have transpired that, yes, Boris did break the rules, he's apologised for that, but certainly not on the scale or to the extent that you would hear from the media. So I think it's a bit more nuanced than that, in that, you know, normal, genuine people had and were upset, and to some extent still are upset with the Prime Minister and the actions, like I said, not just of him, but of Number 10. I think it's got to a stage now where it felt like to me that the general public were moving on from that. They had their views on Boris and the way that he'd acted, the way that he'd gone about dealing with that situation, either rightly or wrongly. And it seems to now, for some reason, there's a doubling down of either whether it's the Post-Sue-Gray report or whether it's because these smaller group of Conservatives and Conservative MPs are seeing their opportunity drift away and they see that this is the last play of the dice to try and get rid of him. Now, ultimately, all of this is just a stupid political game because nobody actually outside of Westminster cares. With the greatest respect, Dan, I think more people care about the Love Island programme starting tonight.
We don't talk about that.
Happening tonight. I mean, the more people in the country will be concerned about that tonight than they will be about this infighting. But what they'll hear on their news channels over the coming days and weeks ahead will be this rerun.
Okay.
And actually, people will be upset with the government because they'll say...
Thank you so much. The Tees Valley Mayor, I need to interrupt you because we're going to cross now live to the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer.
Fed up with a Prime Minister who promises big but never delivers. Fed up with a Prime Minister who's presided over a culture of lies and law-breaking at the heart of government. Fed up with a Prime Minister who is utterly unfit for the great office that he holds. Conservative MPs made their choice tonight. They have ignored the British public and hitched themselves and their party firmly to Boris Johnson and everything that he represents. The Conservative Party now believes that good government focused on improving lives is too much to ask. The Conservative government now believes that breaking the law is no impediment to making the law. The Conservative Party now believes that the British public have no right to expect honest politicians. Over the weekend, the whole country celebrated the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. It was a tribute to 70 years of humility, decency and respect. A reminder of our common cause to build a better country for ourselves, our children and our grandchildren. It is grotesque that the very next day, the Conservative Party has chosen to throw that sense of duty and those values on the bonfire. The choice in British politics is clearer tonight than ever before. A Labour Party united under my leadership with a plan to ensure that Britain is never again plunged into a cost of living crisis, focused on growing the economy so we can afford world-class schools and hospitals, and determined to restore trust in politics. Or a Conservative Party that is divided, propping up Boris Johnson with no plan to tackle the issues facing you and your family. I don't claim that I or my party will get everything right, but I promise that when we don't, we will always be honest with you. We will prioritise your prosperity and your security, and we will treat you with the respect you deserve from your politicians. I promise that together we will end the farce we've seen in recent months, that we will once again put the country first, get rid of this tired, out-of-touch government and get Britain back on track. Thank you.
And that's Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition. Let's see if he remains in post for much longer, remembering that he is being investigated right now by Durham police for potentially, I saw the video, breaking COVID laws himself. So he's taking quite a stance there. I'll return now to my superstar panel, the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and the columnist for Conservative Home Emily Carver. Emily, that's bold of Keir Starmer, because what he is attacking Boris for, arguably, he has also done.
Yeah, I mean, he's still under investigation for breaches of the lockdown rules. Now, I was one of those people who think neither of these scandals, either from the government, from Boris Johnson and Keir Starmer, were particularly egregious breaches of the lockdown rules and justify this level of media attention and media heat and calling for people to go, etc., be sacked. I thought it was all overblown from the start, this Partygate saga. However, coming from Keir Starmer, who has been so holier than thou over the course of these events, I'm sick and tired of hearing him talk about honesty and integrity as if he has a vision for this country. I have not heard a vision from Keir Starmer. He has sat on the fence time and time again. He has nothing to offer the country that is new, that is radical. He uses all these words that he's got something that Boris Johnson doesn't have, and I don't think we've seen that. It's something that Labour Party members also agree that they have not seen, and the only reason Keir Starmer would ever get close to power, close to number 10, is because people won't have anything else to vote for, depending on what happens with the leadership of the Conservative Party. So it won't be a resounding vote for Keir Starmer, come what may.
Carol Malone, your reaction to Starmer's, let's just say, holier-than-thou response tonight?
I've heard that speech 10 times in the last 2 months from exactly the same words, exactly the same patronising tone. And it was very interesting. I mean, we've talked about there what he said, under my leadership, I will make this country better. Does he know something we don't? Because he has said he will resign if Durham police say that he's committed an offence. I mean, I just think the arrogance. I was listening to him this morning in a radio interview, and he was asked what he would do if he was leader of this country. And he trotted out the old windfall tax again, which we both know. The windfall tax he suggested was nowhere near as good as the one that Rishi Sunak suggested. But when pressed on other policies, he doesn't have any. He hasn't had any forever. You know, he can't pin down what he's going to say. And this is a guy who is just weak. He flip-flops all the time. Do you remember during the pandemic? He wanted to keep us in lockdown in perpetuity, and was flip-flopping over that. And I just think anyone who is persuaded by that man is not, and people have got to remember, if they want Boris out and if they want the Tories out come the next election, what they're going to get is him, Angela Rayner, and a coalition of the Greens and of the SNP. What a motley group.
Oh, yeah, and Chuck the Lib Dems too. I mean, Benjamin Butterworth, come on, we're not looking at the next Prime Minister, are we?
Well, you know what nobody else on this show tonight seems to respect is that those decent Conservative voters who lent Boris Johnson their support in 2019 deserve better than this man. You know, I would rather someone who...
Well, I'm asking you about Keir Starmer.
Yeah, well, I'd rather someone who, in your words, is holier than thou, than a bloke who stood up in front of his own MPs today and asked about those breached leaving parties, said, I'd do it again. And the truth is
that's fake news,
the truth is that Tory MPs, what they have to come to terms with is that why is it always someone else's
Emily, do you want to
fault?
clarify what Benjamin's referring to in that
I think
speech?
he was referring to a very specific issue of saying farewell, bidding farewell to staff.
Yes.
The
He
COVID
wasn't talking
breaches.
about the party.
Well, no, it wasn't a
And they
COVID
were
breach,
COVID
Benjamin.
breach.
Do you not understand? Benjamin, you've got to stick to the facts, because Boris Johnson did break the law. He received a fixed penalty notice for receiving a cake between meetings during the day on the day of his birthday in 2020. So for you to say anything else was a breach is factually incorrect. And I think it's very, very important that we stick to the facts.
The truth is that, you know, what you have to explain is that apparently it's always
Well, you've
someone
just
else...
presented a mistruth.
Apparently it's always someone else's fault. It's the EU's fault, the court's fault, Remainers' fault, the media's fault, Sue Gray's fault, the Met's fault, the civil services fault.
He hasn't said any of that. He just made that up again.
Will you accept, and the Tory MPs that are trotted out to defend him, that sometimes, in this case, it's clearly Boris Johnson's fault?
Benjamin, I have criticised Boris Johnson.
Has he blamed everyone you just named there?
He quite literally just sat there and tried to blame
criticised
the
Boris
media
Johnson,
for the last
Benjamin,
25
but there's
minutes.
a real difference for saying that we should throw out a democratically elected Prime Minister, because if we turn into that sort of democracy, a banana republic democracy, where our general election doesn't matter, we're heading down a slippery slope. Where the media and the establishment determines who's Prime Minister. And you know what? I trust the British public to determine who is Prime Minister.
Well, then
so
let's have
you
a
might
general
want Boris
election,
up, and
Dan.
let's wait for the election.
Let's have a general election then, Dan, because the pollings are pretty damn clear. Every time, 6 in 10 says Boris Johnson should go.
Benjamin,
if they spoke for the country tonight, he'd be out of a job.
2 polls today. A YouGov poll of Tory members found they'd prefer him to stay on, 53% to 42%. An opinion poll shows that overall, it's 53% for him to stay, 34% for him to go. That's not all the polls. That's
now,
that's Conservative Party members.
I just want to show you all.
Well, this country isn't run by Tory members, believe it or not.
Dad,
OK, hold up.
He's not listening.
Hold up.
No, I'm not going to clarify this.
OK, clarify.
One was Tory Party members, the next was Tory Party supporters.
OK. I just want to show you the moment, in case you have just tuned in, the moment at the top of the hour when the chair of the 1922 committee, Graham Brady, announced the results of tonight's confidence vote.
I can report as returning officer that 359 ballots were cast, no spoiled ballots, that the vote in favour of having confidence in Boris Johnson as leader was 211 votes, and the vote against was 148 votes. And therefore, I can announce that the Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
Nadhim Zahawi, the Education Secretary, someone who has been suggested as a potential successor to Boris Johnson if he does leave the Prime Ministership at some point, has reacted tonight. Let's look.
It's a ballot. 50 plus 1 is a majority, right? Boris did much better than that. We draw a line and we move on because we've got 2 years to demonstrate to the nation that we can deliver on the economy. We've got to deal with the global battle against inflation. We've got to deal with the backlog of the NHS, safer streets, and of course, war in Europe. What do you think President Zelensky will be thinking tonight? He'll be punching the air because he knows his great ally Boris Johnson will be Prime Minister tomorrow morning.
Carol, do you agree with that? Do you think the Ukraine war and the fact that we have become a great ally to President Zelensky should have anything to do with domestic political matters?
Yeah, I mean, I said it earlier. You know, we are leading the way with Europe. We are convincing people in Europe to support Ukraine because we know what it is. Because Russia is threatening all of Europe currently. It's a really important thing. And I'm just looking at Nadhim Zahawi. I really like him, and I like a lot of the other possible contenders, but they're nowhere near ready to govern. And it's really good to see him giving Boris his support. I mean, some of the other contenders that that are up there, Liz Truss, God almighty, we're talking about Keir Starmer having no policies. I don't know what Liz Truss thinks about anything other than the fact she wants to be Prime Minister and will do anything to get there. Somebody suggested Dominic Raab tonight. This is the guy who stayed on his holidays when Afghanistan was falling. And Hunt, Jeremy Hunt, the idea that Jeremy Hunt, the man...
Well, that just can't happen.
...who nearly wrecked the NHS. Can anyone imagine what he would be like? Can you imagine what
And of course,
like?
Nadine Dorries has revealed today that during the COVID pandemic, Emily Carver, Jeremy Hunt was pushing for the UK government to ape China's zero COVID policy. According to Nadine Dorries, who was a health minister at the time, Jeremy Hunt wanted to forcibly drag Brits from their home and put them in isolation if they tested positive for COVID. So I'm sorry, if he is the answer, then the Tory party needs to think very quickly about what the heck is the question, Emma.
And this, of course, is the same Jeremy Hunt who said that under his leadership, there would have been no need for lockdown restrictions to begin with. So which one is it, Jeremy? Is it either Chinese style, let's follow the Chinese model of locking people up in their home if they've got the sniffles forever, for time on end, as we're still seeing in China now? Or is it that he would have been so brilliant and managed the NHS so well and managed the pandemic so well that we would have never been in a situation to lock down anyway? I'm not sure I believe him. He's had a lot to say about the NHS, about how awful it is. He was the man who was in charge of the NHS for God knows how many years. I can't stand people who pretend to be something that they're not. And Jeremy Hunt is very much a technocrat, and he's very much a little bit of an authoritarian, if we can take what he said then to approve anything. So I think we don't want the Conservative Party to go back to where it was pre-2016 and pretend that Brexit never happened, go back to trying to get back into the single market as if time never changed, as if Boris Johnson didn't galvanise new support that had no one to vote for so long. They felt that suddenly finally they had someone to vote for with Boris Johnson. I think Conservative
Indeed.
MPs
And I
need to
speak
remember
to so
that.
many Tory party voters who voted for Boris for the first time in 2019. They voted for the first time for Brexit, and they say, if Boris is deposed in this manner, never again. Now, look, I think we've got a look at tonight's vote graphically, so we can just put that up on screen. There we go, 211 votes for the Prime Minister. Of course, a majority, the 359 MPs, is all that was required. So as long as he received 180 votes, he gets to stay as PM. And what's more for the Prime Minister, he can't be challenged for another year. But Benjamin Butterworth, earlier this morning, Graham Brady did suggest that that rule could be changed. That doesn't seem fair, does it?
Well, we know from history that people that do better than Boris Johnson did tonight have subsequently stepped down because they felt they couldn't bring their parliamentary Conservative Party together. And the reality is, whatever view you take on this vote, that is the situation he faces. Much like Jeremy Corbyn never brought his parliamentary party together when many of them didn't support his leadership. And, you know,
OK, well, look, we're going to come back and we'll talk much more about this tonight. My superstar panel with me till the end of the show, Carol Malone, Benjamin Butterworth and Emily Carver. But it's time now for The Clash. And as you've been hearing, Prime Minister Boris Johnson has defeated the Tory rebels and secured his premiership for another year at least. So, should he now lead the party into the next election? Your view is always the most important to me on this show. Email me, dan@gbnews.uk, tweet me @gbnews. We've got our Twitter poll, which you can vote in, and I'll bring you those results shortly. But first, to debate this evening, former Conservative Minister Edwina Currie, the Tory MP and Boris Johnson supporter Peter Bone, the journalist and former Boris advisor Tim Montgomery, and the political commentator Richard Taylor from Wales. Peter Bone, let me start with you. Were you in the room tonight? What was the vibe and what happened afterwards?
I wasn't in the room. I was waiting here to do your programme. There seems to be a party atmosphere down on College Green. Lots of people playing music in support of the Prime Minister, I guess.
So, Peter, to confirm, you voted in support of Boris Johnson?
Oh, yeah, of course. Boris is the right person to lead the Conservative Party. The Parliamentary Party has decisively decided that tonight. The last time there was a vote of Conservative MPs in the leadership where Boris took place, he only got 51% of the vote. So he's done a lot better tonight, and now we can get on with governing the country. I'm glad this vote took place because we needed to lance the boil of all this speculation. We now know he has the support of the majority of the Conservative Party. We know he's got the support of the members in the country. Let's go on and govern for the next 2 years, and then lead it up to the electorate whether the Conservatives and Boris are thrown out. I think we'll win the next election, but it's up to the electorate, not up to a handful of dissident backbench MPs.
Another Tory minister has joined me too, David Mallet. Great to have you. David, you say that this vote dooms the Tories to defeat at the next election, so you disagree with Peter Bone strongly. Why?
Well, I mean, you cannot say that a Prime Minister is doing well when, as leader of the party, 41% of those who are closest to him, those who see him day in, day out in Parliament, don't have confidence in him. And experience shows that even when leadership candidates win, if they win as narrowly as this, they rarely survive for very long. And that was certainly the case with Theresa May, certainly the case with Margaret Thatcher. I think that Boris is doomed as a result of this. He obviously will have to be dragged kicking and screaming from number 10. But, you know, if 41% of your own core support in Parliament do not have confidence in you, how can you expect the rest of a divided country to have confidence?
Edwina Currie, you are another former Tory minister, of course. You have supported Boris Johnson steadfastly. Does he retain your support tonight?
Well, I have to say, first of all, Dan, I nearly had a heart attack earlier. I agreed with every word you said when you were talking to your panel. I thought you were brilliant. So much has been made of party. So much has been made about Partygate that I think is a load of eyewash. And I think a lot of people, you know, I live in a red wall seat up in the north of England. A lot of people up here, they know perfectly well Boris is far from perfect, just like themselves. They are far from perfect. We all do our best and we work hard and all that kind of stuff. But in the end, it's good to see that he's had a vote and it's been dealt with. I would rather that the opponents were 48 rather than 148. But even so, I think that's a pretty resounding win. And we look forward to going on and winning the next general election.
Tim Montgomery, you disagree with Edwina, and you think cabinet ministers now need to challenge Boris. Why? He's won. Surely it doesn't matter what margin of victory he has. He's won.
Dan Wootton, I love your show, but I'm going to be the mirror opposite of what Edwina has just said. I have disagreed with every single word that you have just uttered. I think I have agreed with Benjamin Butterworth for the first time in my life.
No, the world's gone mad.
Revisit my position. But look, this is the fact out there. Whatever you may say, whatever Edwina may say, whatever anyone might say about their anecdotal evidence, you can dismiss one opinion poll. You can dismiss a couple of opinion polls. But now opinion poll after opinion poll says that the vast majority of the British people do not trust the Prime Minister. To put it bluntly, they think he is a liar. You cannot go into a general election talking about lockdown or tax or climate change or whatever and have a Prime Minister who is fundamentally untrusted. He did not win tonight's vote in any real sense. When you have that percentage of your own parliamentary party, as David Mellor has just absolutely bullseye said, against you, if you can't even command confidence amongst your parliamentary party to this extent, you are doomed. What we now need, as you say, Dan, as referring to one of my tweets, is the cabinet needs to finally get some balls and take on this Prime Minister. He can't be trusted. The British people have decided that. There's no longer Boris Johnson on trial. The Conservative Party is on trial. Are they going to stand by a man who people don't believe in anymore?
OK, well, let me get Peter Bone to respond to that. Peter Bone, how do you respond as a Tory MP who supported and voted for Boris tonight?
I'm afraid Tim hasn't liked Boris for a very long time. And the truth of the matter is, in the local elections, and not an opinion poll, but elections where people voted only a few weeks ago, north of Watford, in England, Conservatives gained seats against Labour. Labour are clearly not a government in waiting. And we're mid-term, and Tim knows full well that in mid-term, parties are normally 20 points behind. We're only about 6 points behind. What will happen is Boris will concentrate on the important issues facing the country. Obviously, the terrible war in Europe, the economy, stopping illegal migrants coming across in small boats, and then the electorate will judge us on that. And it's for the electorate to decide whether the Conservatives and Boris get thrown out, not for a backbench rebellion of Conservative MPs. He got, percentage-wise, far more votes tonight than when we had the last election by MPs, when he only got 51%. So he's improved the situation. So I'm looking forward to the Boris Johnson going on governing the country, Conservative policies, cutting taxes as well, and winning the next general election.
OK, well, look, I want to cross to Richard Taylor, our friend in Wales. Richard, where do you stand? Boris, should he stay or should he go?
I think a lot of us assumed that Boris would win this vote tonight, but it doesn't bode well for his premiership in the future. Very damaging. When you consider historically, we've seen what happened to Theresa May, John Major, Margaret Thatcher. Clearly, this is going to affect his premiership. And should he be the next Prime Minister leading us into the next general election is a bigger question, because, of course, this is going to be hugely damaging to the Conservative Party. When you consider as well, Dan, of course, he's got the support, a majority support from his own party members. What about the public? As Peter Bone has just mentioned there, the public trust, and it's about trust. People who are elected officials to represent the people, it's about giving them our trust by consent. And unfortunately, Boris, time after time, has proven himself to be someone that he cannot be trusted. And I make this point very clear because he said he would get Brexit done. He has not got Brexit done. We have the Northern Ireland Protocol going on. We have 186 coastal communities who feel absolutely betrayed by Boris Johnson. And of course, we've got the cost of living crisis happening right now. And yet we've got the highest taxing government in the last 70 years. A Conservative government who claim to be the ones who cut taxes, and yet here we are in the middle of a cost of living crisis under Boris Johnson's premiership, and all of his MPs today on social media, on Twitter, are posted he got all the big calls right. No, he did not. And I'd like to ask.
Well, let me put that to Edwina Currie. Edwina Currie,
that we're facing right now. What does he think about the Northern Ireland Protocol? What does he think about the betrayal Boris Johnson has done to the people of this country, and the fact that he's lied to the people of this country?
Richard, I just want Edwina to respond specifically, Edwina, on the tax point, because I disagree with a lot of what Richard said, but I 100% agree with him when it comes to big taxes. That isn't Conservative. It's not what Boris was elected for, and surely it has to change.
Let me just remind everybody that the whole issue of Partygate is music to the ears of certain sectors of the Labour Party. And if Keir Starmer finds himself in trouble as well, that will suit those sectors. There are people who are Corbynistas, there are people who are Momentum, there are people who are much more left-wing than I think any of us are talking tonight. It actually suits a very big swathe of the country that lost the last election comprehensively, nothing to do with Brexit, the left wing, the Corbynista wing of the Labour Party. It suits them to have us talking about Partygate. And I really do think that we should move on. When it comes to putting taxes up, what Margaret Thatcher used to say is, you've really got to think about sound money. If you're going to spend a lot of money, then you have to make sure it's coming in. And the borrowing is always a very dangerous slope. We are borrowing far too much as a country. We will pay for that in the end, or our children will pay for that in the end, especially as interest rates go up. They've been historically low. We can make the mistake of borrowing when it's historically low, and then you're going to be facing real trouble in future. That's
David Mellor. David Mellor, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree with everything Edwina has just said, and I think that the problem is that Boris is not a believer in sound money. Boris is not really a conservative on economic policy. Boris is a spend sort of crypto-socialist. But I think the real problem for Boris, going back to what Tim Montgomery was saying, is this. Boris succeeded in becoming mayor of London twice, and London is a Labour town, because what he was able to do was get people to look at him as a personality and to enjoy him as a personality. But the problem is the last couple of years have made him almost impossible for people to trust. It's like the old joke about Harold Wilson, who was a very successful politician who ultimately fell apart because of persistently lying. And the question always was, well, how do you know Harold Wilson is lying? And the answer was his lips move. And I think it's got that way with Boris. And I cannot see Boris recovering public confidence. And this is why what we've seen today is it's not the end of a war. It's not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end. It may be the end of the beginning.
Okay. I hear you. I want you all to hold fire for just one moment, because Boris Johnson has spoken for the first time since surviving the Tory confidence vote, 211 votes to 148. Let's watch.
A very good result for politics and for the country.
You think it's a good result?
I do. Just in this sense, I think it's a convincing result, a decisive result, and what it means is that as a government we can move on and focus on the stuff that I think really matters to people.
Sorry, I think it's a decisive result. Theresa May did better than you, and your allies wanted her to go straight away. How is this different? How can you possibly continue?
This is I've got a far bigger mandate from my own parliamentary colleagues, for instance, than I had in 2019. And
Margaret Thatcher had a pretty big mandate from the electorate, but she had to go when it was clear the MPs turned against her.
I'm grateful to colleagues. I'm grateful for the support that they've given me. And of course I understand that what we need to do now is come together as a government, as a party, and that is exactly what we can now do. And what this gives us is the opportunity to put behind us all the stuff that I know the media have quite properly wanted to focus on for a very long time, and to do our job, which is to focus on the stuff that I think the public actually want us to be talking about, which is what we are doing to help the people of this country and all the things we're doing to take this country forward.
Okay.
And so what this means tonight is that we can focus on exactly that. We can focus on what we're doing to help people with the cost of living, with what we're doing to clear the COVID backlogs, with what we're doing to make streets and communities safer by putting more police out. And it gives us the opportunity to continue to unite, to level up, to strengthen our economy. We're going to go through a continuing difficult time because of the inflationary pressures that the world is experiencing, but we have a lot of natural strength, not least the lowest unemployment since 1974. And what I think is important about tonight, and forgive me, I'm going to say it again, I think this is very good news because it allows the government to focus on those issues. And
okay,
that's
so
what
you say you want to focus on those issues.
Yes.
148 MPs on your own side are against you. They're going to be dragging you through the mud. How can you possibly govern with those numbers? You really think that's a good result?
I do.
It's a good result.
I certainly think it is, because don't forget that when I first stood to be leader of the Conservative Party in 2019, I didn't get anything like that much support from my colleagues in Parliament. We're building that, and what we have now is an opportunity to put behind us all the stuff, as I say, that
but not broken Boris Johnson. Tim Montgomery, you know him well. He looks shell-shocked there, but making a clarion call to the country and his party and folk like you, Tim, to come together for the good of the nation. Your thoughts?
Look, what I don't understand, Dan, is I thought that was a very complacent reaction from the Prime Minister. What I don't understand, or what I'm not hearing from the Prime Minister, what I don't understand about people like you, Dan, and Peter, is we have a Prime Minister who's raising taxes, has just imposed a tax, a national insurance tax on working people, is imposing green taxes, which are increasing the cost of living, has completely failed to control the crossings of the English Channel by illegal migrants. If you look at Conservative issue after Conservative issue, this Prime Minister is failing the people who voted for him. We know he doesn't tell the truth.
Peter Bone, can you react to that?
We cannot carry on like this.
OK, Peter, final word to you.
Well, Tim is right that the challenges are cutting taxation and dealing with the illegal migrants. But I think Tim's a little unfair on what Boris has been doing so far. He got Brexit done. He dealt with the COVID pandemic. He got the first vaccination in the Western world. He did all those things which were completely Conservative policies. And he's going to... The challenge, and Tim's right, is for us to do better on the economy, do better on taxes. But the Prime Minister's already and the Chancellor already said they're going to cut income tax. So that is a challenge for us, and he's right, and we have to deliver on that.
Exactly.
If we delivery is going to be key. The British people will support.
But the Westminster psychodrama has to end. Peter Bone, thank you so much. Thank you too to former Conservative ministers Edwina Currie and David Mellor. So too journalist and former Boris advisor Tim Montgomery, and our political commentator from Wales, Richard Taylor. So who do you agree with tonight on a seismic political day? Well, Darryl says he will, and the public will vote for him again because they know this is all about Brexit. From Gary, yes, a few rogue MPs who are still salty over Brexit do not reflect the feelings of the majority of the country. And from Bell via email, yes, but he only has a chance if he delivers what the people want. He got huge support in the general election because he was giving the public what they wanted, Brexit. But that was 2 years ago. He needs to return to right Conservative policies or the party will be finished. And your verdict is now in. 63% of you agree that Boris Johnson should leave the Conservatives into the next election, while 37% of you say he shouldn't. So, Neil Oliver and Lionel Shriver still to come tonight. But first, breaking tonight, if you've just joined us, Boris Johnson has won a confidence vote with a majority of 211 votes to 148. And in the run-up to that crunch vote, Tory rebels had been doing their best to whip party colleagues into a frenzy by honing in on Boris getting a few solitary boos at the weekend. A 758-word document written by an anonymous MP was circulated over WhatsApp detailing the reasons why Boris is, quote, no longer an electoral asset, citing the response to the PM outside Friday's service of Thanksgiving at St Paul's Cathedral as the final straw. But are a few Jubilee crowd members an accurate way of measuring the public's feelings for the PM, especially when the craven mainstream media has been overplaying the seriousness of it all? So I want to show you quite a few things that annoyed me over the weekend here. This is what Sly News actually broadcast live on the day.
There you go. Prime Minister. I'm just going to pause to hear the crowd.
So they didn't have much to say there, and Kay Burley doesn't appear to hear any boos, but they haven't stopped banging on about it all day today.
We're just going to play it anyway and see what our viewers think, and then perhaps you can tell me again what you think. Let's just have a very quick listen.
The volume up to get your readers to be too concerned about that. That was a bit miserable, really.
And obviously, the BBC, well, I've been loving it.
Booing in the crowd there. Well, and you can hear it. There is really quite a lot of booing, actually. Wow. A substantial amount. Didn't see that coming.
So, Brendan, the Tory rebels decided he's no longer an electoral asset on the back of those clips. Is that smart? Because Kay Burley couldn't even hear the boos to begin with.
It's not smart at all. And as you say, I mean, obviously a few people booed. We all heard them. You don't have, one doesn't have to go down the conspiracy theory route of thinking that the media completely invented it. But it is undoubtedly the case that whether you hear the boos or not depends on who you watch, where their microphones were, whether they chose to emphasize the boos or not. And some clips, as you've just demonstrated, you can't really hear many boos at all. In other clips, you can. So this is part of a media agenda, I think, where they obviously don't like Boris for numerous reasons, including because he's the man who got Brexit done, and they've got the knives out for him. So I think this idea that these few boos are really the last nail in the coffin of Boris Johnson, I think that's a case of Tory rebels looking for evidence that the public is on their side, rather desperately scrabbling about for that evidence. I don't find it convincing at all.
And Brendan, your reaction to tonight's vote. Is Boris Johnson safe, or is this the beginning of the end? Which, if you've watched any of the BBC or listened to any BBC radio station or watched Sly News at all today, that's what they want you to believe.
It's really hard to tell at the moment, isn't it? I mean, I think the numbers are rough for Boris. I think 148 of your own MPs voting against you is never going to be a good thing. It's not going to feel good. It's not going to look good. And he has made a rod for his own back with a lot of his behaviour over the past few months. But the thing that worries me is the question of why so many in the political elites and also the media elites are really keen to get rid of Boris. And it's because he does represent, to a certain extent, that Brexit spirit. He does seem to, or he wants to, embody populism. Whether he successfully does or not is a different question. And they really detest those kinds of political ideas. And they want to go back to the old regime of technocracy and, when they were in charge rather than the plebs who Boris has given voice to. So there's lots of agendas swirling around in this. It's not a clear-cut case of Boris being pushed out because of Partygate. This is highly political. There's a lot of anti-Brexit sentiment, and I'm worried about what would come after Boris. That's something that concerns me enormously.
Very much. I'm worried about that too. Brendan O'Neill, Spiked Online's chief political writer. Thank you so much, Brendan. But coming up, as Lord Adonis warns if Boris goes, Brexit goes, does the triumphant but embattled PM need to stay in power to save Brexit? My superstar panel are here at 10 p.m. to debate that in the Media Buzz, and we'll get a first look at how tomorrow's newspapers are covering the result too. But first, as Prince Charles expresses concern about the bickering that's plagued the country, will Platinum Jubilee patriotism help unify a very divided nation and a very divided Tory party? Our very own Neil Oliver is here next on how we can capitalise on the Jubilee spirit.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News. Neil Oliver is tonight's outsider. And breaking tonight, it's ironic that this confidence vote that's divided not only the Tories but the public was called today. Of course, Boris winning with 211 votes compared to 148 against. But given this vote was called just 24 hours ago while celebrating his mother's Platinum Jubilee, wasn't it brilliant? Prince Charles has actually hit out at the division that's plaguing the country he will one day rule. According to one prominent guest at the big Jubilee lunch inside the Oval Cricket Ground, Charles, who attended yesterday's event with the Duchess of Cornwall, was delighted at how people across the UK came together for the royal milestone. Social media CEO Sarah Fryer told reporters that the Prince of Wales had commented, when it comes to Monday, that's today, are we going to go back to all the bickering again? Let's hope we don't do that. Well, Neil Oliver, thanks to the actions of these Tory backbenchers today, that's exactly what we have done. So, Neil, your reaction to that statement from Prince Charles and also tonight's vote?
Well, Prince Charles, first of all, I suppose it depends really what he means by bickering. The Jubilee notwithstanding, people have a lot to complain about. The country has been spectacularly divided by 2 years of disastrous government policy, and that's not going to go away on account of the Jubilee. One or two cream teas, doth not a summer make. And it was good. It was lovely to see people coming together, communities having something to celebrate, celebrating Britain and Britishness. It was a grand occasion, but there is no realistic way that you can allow that to disguise or to obscure the misery that's the reality for millions. Cost of living, rising prices, and all the rest of it. I thought the Jubilee was a grand event, but there was also a hint of sadness about it. There was something of the eulogy about it, of an end of an era, there was a certain somberness I felt lurking in the background of it. And I don't think it would be right for Prince Charles or anybody else amongst the elite to just say, there's a Jubilee now, stop complaining. I think that's a bit much to ask, given what people have been through and are going to go through.
And Neil, obviously the vote tonight, Boris has survived, but it's hardly a ringing endorsement. What do you make of it, Neil?
Well, Dan, I'm cynical about the political establishment at the moment. I do understand at a visceral level why people have a lingering affection or support, at least for Boris. You know exactly what he is, and you don't need me to describe what he is. He's a particular type of man. So there's nothing, that he's. You can tell what he is, which makes him very different from the likes of Keir Starmer, who is a completely hollow individual, a blank slate upon which whatever idea of the day seems to be transmitted or projected. The contenders that could have supplanted Boris are a bunch of.
And I think that's something that worries both of us, isn't it, Neil Oliver? If the alternative is Jeremy Hunt, then hell no. Neil Oliver, great analysis as ever. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dan.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Dan Wootton, and breaking tonight, Boris Johnson is safe as Prime Minister for now after seeing off a Tory rebellion and winning a confidence vote.
I can announce that the Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
The best analysis coming up throughout the night from senior Tories and my superstar panel of Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and Conservative Home columnist Emily Carver. In just a moment, we'll see how the first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages are reacting to the vote. Before I ask, does Boris need to stay in power to save Brexit? Then at 10:30, with the MSM claiming that winning a confidence vote still isn't enough to secure his leadership. Why is the media so desperate to see Boris deposed?
You think a lot of people saying even if the Prime Minister wins this is the beginning of the end for him. Can he really recover if they don't get the numbers?
And an uncancelled tonight, is the confidence vote a betrayal of Conservative with a small c voters living in fear of a socialist coalition of Labour, the Lib Dems, the SNP and the Greens? Best-selling author Lionel Shriver thinks so. She joins me for her sharp take at 10:40. Plus, does the Jubilee prove that the monarchy have moved on from Harry and Meghan, who were booed this weekend? Astonishing stuff. Well, royal author Lady Colin Campbell will be with me to look at what the future holds for the royals and the exiled Sussexes, because, we can't forget the Platinum Jubilee. I want to feel some of those good moments tonight amidst this turmoil. Plus, should the super-sensitive BBC really have apologised for this coronation chicken critique from Strictly Come Dancing's Len Goodman?
Never had, curry and curry powder. No. My nan used to call it all foreign muck.
That's in the media buzz coming up next. And will hypocritical FIFA be named my first union jackass of the week? GBUJ closes out the show at 10:50. But wrapping up what is a huge political night of news, Polly Middlehurst.
Dan, thank you very much indeed. Indeed, it is a night for news, and the latest story is the Prime Minister has won a crucial vote of confidence in his leadership, calling it a very good result for politics and for the country.
The vote in favour of having confidence in Boris Johnson as leader was 211 votes, and the vote against was 148 votes. And therefore, I can announce that the Parliamentary Party does have confidence.
So So you heard it yourself, 211 MPs voting with the Prime Minister. He's winning there by 63 votes, but his authority dealt rather a blow after 148 of his own refused to back him. Under Conservative Party rules, though, a second confidence vote can't be called for another 12 months. The Prime Minister says his support within the party has grown and now it's time to move on.
What we need to do now is come together as a government, as a party, and that is exactly what we can now do. And what this gives us is the opportunity to put behind us all the stuff that I know the media have quite properly wanted to focus on for a very long time, and to do our job, which is to focus on the stuff that I think the public actually want us to be talking about.
Well, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says a divided Conservative Party has let the country down by failing to oust a Prime Minister who's not fit for office.
Conservative MPs made their choice tonight. They have ignored the British public and hitched themselves and their party firmly to Boris Johnson and everything that he represents. The Conservative Party now believes that good government focused on improving lives is too much to ask.
Starmer. Well, GB News political editor Darren McCaffrey is in Westminster watching events for us. Darren, a dramatic day. What happens now?
Yeah, very dramatic day indeed. The Prime Minister tonight, Polly, calling it a convincing and decisive victory for him. The problem is that many of his own Conservative MPs will not agree with that assessment. And this is all very, very, very tricky stuff for the Prime Minister. Why do I say that? Well, as you pointed out, 40%, 4 out of every 10 Conservative MPs do not have confidence in his leadership. He won that vote, but he won it less convincingly than Theresa May did a couple of years ago, than Margaret Thatcher did, than indeed John Major did. And that is why I think the Prime Minister is and has been politically wounded by this vote tonight. Yes, he's won. Yes, in theory, he is safe for another year. Yes, he will try and win back some of those MPs with announcements in the weeks to come. But there are also challenges ahead as well, Polly, not to forget. There are 2 by-elections in a couple of weeks' time, one in which Labour may well win, one in which the Lib Dems may well win down in Tiverton. And, of course, there's that investigation by the Privileges Committee into whether he misled Parliament. So you add all that together, and many tonight are saying that while the Prime Minister has won tonight and that vote, he politically is potentially in the last chance saloon, and that it is now, some would suggest, only a matter of time that he remains inside number 10 as Downing Street. It's not a question of if anymore. But in the end, the Prime Minister will try and refocus on what he thinks the issues that matter to the public are, but the politics here is not going to get easy anytime soon.
Darren McCaffrey on College Green in Westminster, live for us. Thanks very much indeed. Well, you're up to date on TV, online and on your radio via DAB+. You're tuned to GB News. More now from Dan Wootton tonight.
Tomorrow's News Tonight now on Our Media Buzz. One front page in so far, it is the Financial Times, which describes Boris Johnson as, quote, wounded after his confidence vote survival. They report there could be tax cuts on the horizon. Hallelujah! As the PM bids to woo back colleagues and voters. It certainly would be good news. The paper urges caution for Boris supporters, however, mentioning how previous Conservative Prime Ministers, including Margaret Thatcher, John Major and Theresa May, have won similar challenges to their leadership only to lose office shortly afterwards. My superstar panel back with me now, the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth and columnist for Conservative Home Emily Carver. Now, breaking tonight, as we just heard, Boris Johnson has successfully defeated the left-wing media-fueled Tory rebellion by winning a confidence vote in his leadership by 211 votes to 148. Here's what the Prime Minister has had to say in the last hour.
I'm grateful to colleagues. I'm grateful for the support that they've given me. And, of course, I understand that what we need to do now is come together as a government, as a party, and that is exactly what we can now do. And what this gives us is the opportunity to put behind us all the stuff that I know the media have quite properly wanted to focus on for a very long time, and to do our job, which is to focus on the stuff that I think the public actually want us to be talking about, which is what we are doing to help the people of this country.
Champagne quaffing liberal elites will be putting the bubbly back on ice. But throughout today, they couldn't disguise their excitement at the prospect of Britain's Brexit hero being ousted as PM, like Labour peer and Ramona-in-Chief Andrew Adonis, who feverishly tweeted, "If Boris goes, Brexit goes, in time." And here's the thing, he's actually telling the truth. This was Labour leader, also another massive Ramona, Keir Starmer, reacting to Boris winning the vote.
Conservative MPs made their choice tonight. They have ignored the British public and hitched themselves and their party firmly to Boris Johnson and everything that he represents. The Conservative Party now believes that good government focused on improving lives is too much to ask.
Let's be honest, this was a rebellion propelled by Ramonas in the Tory party, like Tobias Ellwood, who gave the game away by making the ridiculous suggestion last week that we rejoin the EU single market to ease the cost of living crisis. And all of the favourites to take his place, in number 10, Boris's place that is, so Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, ex-Health Minister Jeremy Hunt and Chair of the Foreign Affairs Select Committee Tom Tugendhat, all voted to remain in 2016. So in my view, it's clear we need Boris Johnson to stay in power to save Brexit and preserve the biggest democratic mandate in British history. Carol Malone, am I wrong to be paranoid?
No, I think this is absolutely what this is all about. I mean, I think a lot of the most vocal people are the people who are, who've been most vocal in their opposition of Boris. That one thing they have in common is that they all hate Boris and they all hate Brexit. And it's
always the two things.
It's always the thing together, yeah. And they have no clue what their objective is in ousting them. All they know is they want them out because they think if they get them out, they've got half a chance of getting Brexit reversed. I mean, they have no idea who would replace them, but they would want to remain there. I mean, can you imagine if Jeremy Hunt did get the job, and he was 5-1 on today to get it if there had been a... but can you imagine him trying to make Brexit work, a man who hates the very idea
of it? He wouldn't. He just wouldn't.
Well, no, he wouldn't do it, and that's the point. And the thing is, they just want him out, and their obsession is actually quite scary. And it just takes me back to 2018, 2019, in the House of Commons, when we saw them time and time again taking votes and taking decisions that were against the will of the British people. Whether they like it or not, Boris is the will of the British people. He got an 80-seat majority in the last election, and yes, he's made many mistakes. Yes, I do believe he's been damaged by this. But, Boris said tonight he wants the party to come together and also move on. These people are not going to let him move on. This is going to be 2018 all over again.
Benjamin Butterworth, I mean, it's true, isn't it? Carol is right.
No.
You are scarily obsessed with doing all you can to damage Brexit.
No, completely wrong to say, in Carol's words, that the one thing all these people have in common is opposing Brexit. One of the most prominent critics of Boris Johnson has been Steve Baker, who is about the most hardline Brexiteer in Parliament. Will Wragg, a Brexiteer throughout his whole life, who wants Boris Johnson to go because he says he's not a proper Conservative. Jesse Norman, a Tory MP who supported Boris throughout, voted for him and advocated for him to be leader in the first place, who says he wants to go. So this claim is false. And I want to pick up on something that...
Three people, Ben.
It's three pretty prominent people. And the idea that this is an alignment of anti-Brexiteers in the Tory party doesn't stand up to the facts. And Peter Bone, one of your guests...
He's just read out the names of the contenders for the job, most of whom are Remainers.
I think when you have to claim that Priti Patel and Liz Truss aren't supporting Brexit, you're really scraping the barrel.
I think the knives are out from all directions.
Yeah, and I think those people and I definitely think when it comes to someone like Steve Baker, by the way, William Wragg, men who I have huge amounts of respect for, Emily, actually that's much more an anti-lockdown, anti-tax hike position.
It's also, and I think Andrew Adonis is being a bit dramatic when he says Brexit goes if Boris goes. I don't think it will be as clear-cut as that. But I do think that a lot of people, including Steve Baker and those hardline Brexiteers, aren't pleased with how Boris has taken advantage or not taken advantage of Brexit opportunities. We have the highest tax burden in 70 years. There is no escaping that at the moment. We haven't sorted out the Northern Ireland Protocol. There are lots of unanswered questions at this moment, whether the Conservative Party under Boris Johnson's leadership is going down the right path. Having said that, I agree with Carol. What on earth are these politicians think is coming next? What do they think is going to replace Boris Johnson? Because looking at that list that you provided us of potential new leaders of the Conservative Party, I can't say I'm particularly exhilarated by any of those choices that we face.
It's utterly terrifying. I mean, Nadine Dorries revealing today that when she was Health Minister, Jeremy Hunt actually lobbied her, Benjamin, to follow the policies of the totalitarian, communist Chinese government, which now we know amounted to zero COVID. He actually wanted to drag Brits out of their homes if they tested positive for COVID and lock them up in facilities. I mean, these are the sort of contenders for the job. So I'm sorry, Benjamin, you have to accept from a Conservative point of view, I know you're not one, and I'm talking about small C Conservatives here, not party politics. Small C Conservatives are very concerned about the idea of someone like Jeremy Hunt.
Well, look, Dan, you don't need to say sorry, but it's basically what Nadine Dorries said, because in an extraordinary series of tweets, she said that it was a Conservative health secretary and a Conservative government that failed to prepare for the pandemic. So now she said it in her own words, and I'm sure that will be on every later.
But it's true, isn't it, Carol? And this is the big issue. It's blue on blue civil war, and the country cannot afford that.
That's what happened tonight. People tonight watching us should actually just look at Twitter tonight, and there's our own Beverly Turner has tweeted something about Jeremy Hunt. Do you know the story about this?
Yes, I heard about this, but explain
She says that she met him at a fundraiser, and he had told her to move out here to the country. You can get a big house, move in a nanny, maybe her husband too, for gardening and driving stuff. He said, you give them lodgings. It's the perfect solution. He said, it's wonderful. He said, he rushed her into some dining room, and he said, his wife said he'll be PM one day. But she's talking about this guy who's supposed to have a very strong moral compass, who actually is telling her to hire people on the cheap to move into a big house. You get them to work for now. People go on Twitter tonight and see what Bev says. It's very important to see. That's the kind of man we're talking about.
Jeremy Hunt would be an absolute nightmare as Prime Minister. And so I'm sorry, if the choice is keeping Boris, making sure that he re-embraces Conservative principles, making sure that he does introduce a tax cut programme, I will take that risk rather than the risk of totalitarian, authoritarian, globalist Jeremy Hunt taking control of this great country. I really will. Emily Carver, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, do stand by, but I'm going to tell you it wasn't a great weekend for the BBC, which was forced to issue not one, but two grovelling apologies for its Platinum Jubilee coverage. First, it angered the entire population, I think, of Northern Ireland by using the wrong flag to represent the devolved nation. The corporation on Saturday aired the Irish flag to represent Northern Ireland, which is, of course, part of the UK and uses the Union flag, during a segment where comedian Doc Brown spoke of being proud to be British. Watch.
Free lions, you know what they do to me. I see them standing for strength, love and unity. Same with the red dragon, shamrock and thistle. White, black and brown, we unite at the whistle.
Now, so shocking. A BBC spokesperson did issue an apology for the insensitive gaffe, but the blunders just kept on coming. On Sunday, they stupidly gave into the woke mob by apologising for this comment made by former Strictly Come Dancing judge Len Goodman.
My wife did coronation chicken yesterday for our tea, and I've never had it before.
Really?
No, I've never had, curry and curry powder. No. My nan used to call it all foreign muck. So, I'm always worried about it. But I must say, it was delicious.
Now, look, I would say that was an honest, historic anecdote about his gran. Let me tell you, I can think of a lot the BBC should apologise for, especially its coverage of Boris Johnson this weekend. But not that. In fact, such a Weasley apology, I think, is the sort of thing that has a chilling impact on free speech. Coming up, as those broadcasters insist winning a confidence vote still isn't enough to secure his leadership. Why is the media so desperate to see Boris Johnson deposed? My superstar panel return with their take, and we'll have more of the newspaper reactions to the vote too. But first, has the Jubilee proven that the monarchy has moved on from Harry and Meghan? Royal author Lady Colin Campbell is live from Castle Goring with some predictions straight after the break.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Now, we'll have much more on tonight's confidence vote win for Boris Johnson, including more of tomorrow's newspaper front pages in just a moment. But the political turmoil unleashed on the country today by treacherous Tory rebels has overshadowed what should have been an incredible moment of pride for the entire nation. The historic Platinum Jubilee not only celebrated our incomparable Queen, it showed the future of the monarchy is secure. Especially if the stunning balcony moment yesterday evening featuring the Queen, Charles, Camilla, William, Kate, George, Charlotte and Louis is anything to go by. And it also proved that the surly and detached Duke and Duchess of Woke are no longer central to the future of the royal family. In fact, the British public has quite clearly turned on the miserable Montecito runaways. Awkward. And breaking tonight, the Sussexes have just released the first picture of their daughter Lilibet as a toddler. It's to mark her first birthday, which was on Saturday, and perhaps a bid by Harry and Meghan to get back into the headlines after being really a Jubilee non-entity. Lady Colin Campbell, I mean, this was a historic weekend for the royal family, wasn't it? But when it came to Harry and Meghan, I don't know if you agree, but I think it's now clear that they need the monarchy more than the monarchy needs them.
Oh, but that was always a fact. I think that what's really apparent is that they're a busted flush. You know, my understanding is that they are absolutely spitting bricks, that they're very upset, that they're in fact very concerned that their brand has been irretrievably damaged by the fact that the whole world now knows that they are not only third-tier royals, but that nobody actually... Sorry, you need to grab the dog. Somebody needs to grab... Oh, for God's sake.
Dog, Lady C. Lady C is
Sorry
taking
about
control.
that.
Oh, beautiful.
Sorry.
Beautiful.
It's the puppy.
They just want to be
it's the
part
puppy,
of the
and
action.
yes, and but they are a busted flush, and it's very apparent, and my understanding is that they are really concerned that their brand is irretrievably damaged, and that nobody is going to be able to want to revere them hereafter, because they have been quite visibly shown to be reviled by the British people. And also, behind the scenes, I have to tell you, there were 70 people in that room looking at Trooping the Colour with them, every single one of whom went out of their way to avoid them as much as possible. So it wasn't only the British public that was cold-shouldering them, it was within the family and within the British establishment as well that they were being cold-shouldered. And you know, Harry and Meghan had been asked to everything. They were on the list for everything. They were supposed to have shown up at the luncheon at Guildhall. They were supposed to have shown up for the party at the Palace. They were supposed to have been a part of the Jubilee parade. They timed their exit to leave before the Jubilee parade ended so that they could sneak out of the country like thieves, having been caught in the act. I mean, the ignominiousness of it all, the ignominy of it all, is highly embarrassing and very exposing for them as a brand.
No, it's very interesting, Lady C. I also heard about that reaction from the establishment, but also the royal family towards them too, actually. A lot of people saying to me, look, everyone thinks it's Prince Andrew who's the royal pariah. Well, actually, amongst the family who believe that Prince Andrew is innocent, they view Harry and Meghan as the royal pariahs, not Prince Andrew. And Lady C, it was so terrible that they didn't turn up to that event at the Guildhall. I actually spoke to one of the guests who said, because it's a whole selection of rooms at the Guildhall and various royals were working in various different rooms. And I spoke to one of the guests who was left incredibly disappointed because they had no royal in their room and they were told by organisers it was because Harry and Meghan didn't bother to show up.
Well, they didn't bother to show up because they could not contain their rage. When, you see, when they arrived and they were booed, and their boos, they expected a possibility of boos. So they had their paid claque of supporters there to cheer them along, so that was sort of all right-ish. They didn't like that they were booed, but they walked into the cathedral and absolutely everyone cold-shouldered them in a way that only civilised people can do when they are cold-shouldering people. Nobody caught their eye. You know, it was studiedly unnaturally polite, but freezing cold. And they realised, between the booing and the cold shouldering that they got from everybody, then, and my understanding is that by the time they left, they were absolutely spitting bricks. And then the coup de grace, as far as they were concerned, was not only that they were booed, but while they were waiting for their car, that nobody would speak to them except Zara. Knight Tyndall avoided them like the plague. He made absolutely sure he didn't catch their eye. There's Meghan speaking to herself, with him 4 inches away from her. But I also will tell you, they hijacked that car. Did you realise they weren't supposed to be in that car? They were supposed to be in the bus with all of the third-tier royals. And the reason why they were 15 minutes late for the appointed meeting at Clarence House to make sure that they would miss the bus so that they would appear later, because, you know, processions are done in order of diminishing or increasing rank. So the least important will go first and the most important will go last, entering a building, and it's vice versa leaving the building. And they, realizing that they had been lumped with the never-wases so much as the has-beens, they decided that they were going to be late and miss their slot.
I see, so they could go on their own. Fascinating insight, Lady C. I do want to talk positively about what we saw on the balcony last night, because it actually didn't matter that Harry and Meghan weren't there. Prince Charles presented his vision for a slimmed-down monarchy. Of course, initially it was going to include Harry and Meghan. They would have been on the balcony for that moment if they hadn't have gone through with Megxit. But actually, it didn't matter, did it? It was lovely to see Charles and Camilla, the Queen, and then Kate and William with their 3 children, who really stole the show throughout the Jubilee, and I think that's a strong future of the monarchy right there, Lady C. Do you agree?
I couldn't agree more. And isn't that Louis an absolute scene stealer? He's like Aurora. He was such a scene stealer. He was just amazing. Adorable, you know. But I mean, we don't need Harry and Meghan. It's obvious. The country doesn't need them. The monarchy doesn't need them. The royal family doesn't need them. Nobody needs them. And the British people have made their feelings very clear. Harry and Meghan are passé. Let's see what happens from here on in, because I understand that they are both extremely upset by the fact that they have been unmasked as being pretenders and that they have been unmasked as being unimportant. And you know, Meghan didn't marry Harry because he had an IQ of 27. She married him because he was a prince. Let's see how much marriage let's see how much further the marriage goes.
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see.
That the mileage.
Great analysis, Lady C. Thank you so much. As ever, it certainly wasn't a good weekend for them. Now, coming up in Uncancelled, is the Boris confidence vote a betrayal of Conservative voters living in fear of a socialist coalition? Author Lionel Shriver here at 10:40. But next in the Media Buzz, as broadcasters say Boris winning a confidence vote still isn't enough to secure his leadership, why is the media so desperate to see him deposed? My superstar panel on the way next.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
we're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
And let's return to tomorrow's news tonight now in our media buzz. More front pages with the breaking news of the day have just been delivered, and The Guardian predictably leads with PM clinging to power after vote humiliation. The newspaper also mentions that critics cast doubt on Johnson's claim that it was an extremely good, conclusive result. Carry on Pinocchio leads the Daily Star with an imagining of Boris as the fictional character. The clearly disappointed paper says the PM is clinging on to power after surviving what it calls an embarrassing vote of no confidence from his chums. More on the media buzz now with tonight's superstar panel: the Daily Express columnist Carol Malone, senior reporter at the newspaper Benjamin Butterworth, and columnist for Conservative Home Emily Carver. And breaking tonight, Boris Johnson has thanked his Tory colleagues for backing him and vowed to move the country forward after winning tonight's no confidence vote.
I'm grateful to colleagues. I'm grateful for the support that they've given me. And of course, I understand that what we need to do now is come together as a government, as a party. And that is exactly what we can now do. And what this gives us is the opportunity to put behind us all the stuff that I know the media have quite properly wanted to focus on for a very long time, and to do our job, which is to focus on the stuff that I think the public actually want us to be talking about, which is what we are doing to help the people of this country.
Well, after banging on about Partygate for an agonising 6 months, the Boris-hating mainstream media finally got what they wanted with tonight's Tory confidence vote. But a bit like a petulant bunch of toddlers, now they're whining it's still not enough. Sly News, the biased BBC and LBC continued pushing their anti-Boris narrative after the announcement this morning, only to flip their own script once it became clearer that Boris might win, arguing that the vote is now irrelevant and it's time for him to go, regardless of the outcome. Look.
Partygate and the view of the Conservative rebels has illustrated, which is a sense that they're not sure that they, nor a chunk of the electorate, can trust the Prime Minister anymore.
Will he go down as one of the most unsuccessful Conservative Prime Ministers in history?
I think there are plenty of people that think that he could be mortally wounded, and it is difficult to see him recovering if the numbers don't go their way.
While Tory MPs reading from a cut and pasted hymn sheet are claiming that the vaccine rollout is a reason to leave Boris Johnson in power, the husband of the woman who presided over our vaccine rollout has no confidence in his leadership whatsoever.
So I think the Tory party's just got to stop drinking the Kool-Aid, stop taking whatever drugs they're taking, and wake up.
Do you think, a lot of people saying, even if the Prime Minister wins this is the beginning of the end for him? Can he really recover if they don't get the numbers?
Is he done whichever way now?
Now, I'm not sure if the MSM actually understand how democracy works, but the decision as to who sits at number 10 is not up to them, it's up to the people. And in 2019, Britain overwhelmingly voted for Boris, and tonight's victory proves again that he has the support of his party. And we're going to cross now live to Westminster, where we're joined by the Northern Ireland Secretary, Brandon Lewis. So, Brandon, it's been fascinating to watch today because much of the media who demanded this vote over weeks and months now seem to say that the vote isn't enough to secure his leadership. What do you make of it?
Oh, well, I think you've just sort of summed up. So one of the things we see from time to time in politics is people love these kind of Westminster internal stories. And I've got to say, when I'm knocking on doors in my constituency, when I'm talking to people in Northern Ireland and when we do visits around the country, that's not what the constituents that we talk to are interested in. They're interested in seeing their politicians focused on what affects their everyday life, particularly with the global challenge of inflation and pressure on people's pockets. I know that's where the PM wants to get the focus back to.
OK, so what do you make of the vote? Obviously, a large number against the Prime Minister. Does he really have a mandate for a year now?
Yes, he does, absolutely. Look, I have a pretty simplistic view of this, and I say this as somebody who was chairman through the last confidence vote that we had under Theresa May. There's a big difference here. Boris Johnson got an overwhelming majority vote of the party and membership back in 2019, and then in 2019 general election got that overwhelming vote of over 14 million people across the country in a general election. He has got a very clear mandate. We all have been elected on that mandate to deliver, and we need to come back together. We're a big party, and a big open tent party means at times colleagues will have differing views. That's partly what makes us stronger as a party. The vote tonight means we've had that vote. We now come back together, we focus on the job in hand, we focus on what we're elected to do.
Obviously, your Northern Ireland beat is going to prove one of the biggest challenges for the government in the next year. You've got a lot of Ramonas to deal with now, Brandon Lewis, who want to take this opportunity. They sense weakness to try and overturn at least parts of Brexit. Do you think there was a Ramona, or you might say a Remainer, influence today behind today's vote?
Well, I think at certain points over the last few months, we've seen different people who still haven't quite come to terms with that vote in 2016 expressing their views. Look, different colleagues from different parts of the party would have had different reasons for how they voted either way today. That is now behind us. We've had that vote. And like the vote in 2016, we've got to respect democracy. And I think one of the challenges we had in the run-up to the time when Theresa May resigned was that we weren't, as a party, delivering on what people voted for in 2016. And one of the key things that I saw when we were in the general election of 2019 was that determination from people across the country to see a government having that authority to get on and deliver what was voted for. There was a clear democratic vote in 2016. We've got to deliver on that. The Prime Minister has delivered that. We've left the European Union, but you're right, we've got some challenges around resolving some of those remaining issues for Northern Ireland. We're determined to do that, and in the weeks ahead we'll be outlining exactly how we propose to do that.
And you can tell me honestly tonight that you believe Boris Johnson will lead the Conservative Party into the next election?
Yes, I'll go further than that. And I've said this over the last few weeks a few times. I think he will lead us into that election. I think he will win that election. I think there are too many people over the years, both when he ran the second time for Mayor of London, who said he couldn't win it, and he did. And actually, if you remember, even in the run-up to the 2019 election, people were saying that we were not going to win that election, and we didn't just win it. He got a majority, the likes of which we've not seen since the days of the great Margaret Thatcher. So this is somebody who knows how to win elections. He is focused on delivering for people in our country, and I think when we come to that election, that track record of delivery, getting the big decisions right, and the plan for the future to make people's lives better, are why Boris Johnson will not just run and fight the next election, but why we'll win it with him as Prime Minister.
Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis, live from Westminster. Great to have you reacting to that vote tonight. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
To my superstar panel now, Emily Carver, Benjamin Butterworth and Carol Malone. Carol, the media in this country, though, isn't going to accept this.
No, they're not. No, I mean, it started before the vote tonight. You could see all the ones who probably 2 or 3 days ago thought he might lose, weren't sure. When they got a hint tonight that it might be OK, they started getting ready for that. And they were saying the same as I said earlier, that, you know, he's in office but not in power. He's dead man walking. They're predicting how long it's going to be before he's kicked out, before he's replaced. And that will carry on. And that's why when Boris said tonight, I hope we can put this away, no, it's not going to go away. And it really upsets me that certain sections of the media are doing this. And you know what's going to happen tomorrow. Those MPs who voted against, who are very upset, will now start briefing their pets in the media, briefing their friends, putting the line out there, and the narrative will be that, you know, he is dead man walking, that it's only a matter of time. And if you say that often enough to people who read newspapers and who watch television, they believe it's the truth.
Emily Carver, I've been saying this for months. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. The media said for months and months and months there was going to be a confidence vote. There were hardly any letters in, but eventually they create enough turmoil to freak enough MPs out.
I think there's a huge amount of truth to that. Yes, there will be MPs who have been frightened by some of the response that they got when they went back to their constituencies. Sure, there are many people in this country who are very frustrated with the Prime Minister, but the media does continue to push these narratives. And it is clear that there are many, many people, particularly in the broadcast media, who are adamant that Boris Johnson should go, and they push it, and they push it, and they push it, and then it gets fulfilled, as you say. But having said that, I think Boris Johnson must use this as a moment to turn things around. He needs to commit to getting that tax burden down, and he needs to actually be seen to do it. He needs to make sure that we have an energy policy that actually favours affordability and security. There's so many questions.
Benjamin, though, the media, your lot, you are addicted to this drama, aren't you? You love it. You get off on it.
Well, what patronising twaddle to think that the British public and Conservative MPs can't think for themselves. They can.
You don't think they're influenced by the media in this country?
Well, you're always determined to blame anyone but Boris Johnson, and it's absolutely clear that it is his incompetence. And you know what I really blame
Benjamin,
tonight...
I imagine you thought that some people were influenced by the media when it came to the Brexit vote. Or how about when it came down to COVID policies?
I think people can think for themselves, and the truth is that the people we should be calling out are people like Peter Bone, who sat on your show earlier and said it was a resounding victory for Boris Johnson when he got 58%. But hang on, what did he say? He said when she's got only a third of votes against her, she clearly hasn't got the support of the party and should go. That's what he said when Theresa May did better. People like that should be calling out.
Very different scenario.
Bit of offence archaeology there. Carol Malone, Emily Carver,
it's called the truth. Try it.
Now, getting engaged is one of the happiest moments of a person's life. I'm reliably informed. So it stands to reason that saying yes in the happiest place on earth would make the occasion even more magical, right? But this Disneyland Paris proposal has been going viral for all the wrong reasons, after the beautiful moment was ruined by a beastly job's worth.
Yes, that's great, but over here she's going to be even better.
What a moron. Disneyland Paris has since apologised to the couple in question for how the reportedly pre-approved proposal was handled and offered to, quote, make it right. But to me, it looks like they're now truly a Mickey Mouse organisation. Emily Garber, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, do stand by, because coming up, have the Tories had their fun? Well, yes, they have tonight, but I guess it's now my turn to vote as I choose the first greatest Britain and Union jackass of the week. But first, is tonight's confidence vote a betrayal of Conservative with a small c supporters living in fear of a socialist coalition? Best-selling author Lionel Shriver reveals all in a matter of seconds, right after we take a look at what's coming up in tomorrow's show.
Coming up on Dan Wootton tonight, what happens next after the Tory rebellion against Boris Johnson? I'll have the best expert analysis and opinion throughout the show. Plus, I'll meet the man holding the World Health Organization to task, chief correspondent for Rebel News, Avi Yemeni. And there'll be unfiltered opinion courtesy of Nigel Farage and Voice of the People former Corrie actor Charlie Lawson. And as ever, my superstar panel here too. The former Daily Star editor Dawn Neeson, the Conservative commentator Calvin Robinson, and the author and journalist Rebecca Reid. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursday from 9 till 11 on GBNews.
But it's time now for Uncancelled. And this is where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And as you know, breaking tonight, Boris Johnson has survived his no-confidence vote among Tory MPs and will remain leader of the Conservative Party and our Prime Minister. But with leadership vultures still circling the PM, the biggest headache for reckless party rebels is working out who would replace Boris if they still eventually get their way. The PM might not be perfect, but some of the names vying for his job are underwhelming at best and embarrassing or even a little bit scary at worst. For starters, bookies' favourite Jeremy Hunt was last year demanding mandatory vaccinations, harder lockdowns, and according to Nadine Dorries today, wanted to drag COVID-positive Brits out of their homes and put them in isolation units. But no matter how you would describe the would-be contenders, there are real fears toppling Boris will lead to a horrific socialist coalition of Labour, the SNP, Lib Dems and Greens. Real Conservatives and their small c counterparts are all aligned on keeping that kind of woke liberal nightmare at bay. Lionel Shriver with me now on this busy night. So, Lionel, has this no confidence vote been a terrible betrayal of the Tory faithful? And just where do voters go from here if they are trying to avoid that socialist coalition?
Well, you know, I'm a big fan of the Telegraph letters page. And I've been reading for months, if not years, countless party members and just voters writing in declaring that they will never vote conservative again. And I'm just curious, you know, for which party are they planning to vote then? I understand why a lot of conservative voters might be disappointed with Boris Johnson's leadership. He hasn't done very well on energy. His economics are quasi-socialist, but you know there's nowhere to go. And so, if we're talking about a crisis for the Conservative Party, in some ways, either way, whether Boris stays or goes, we don't know who would replace him, as you said. So, you know, whatever's behind door number 3 could be an equal catastrophe. I don't want to see this country in the hands of Keir Starmer and his merry men. I think it would be a catastrophe, and yet I don't see a very happy future from here. And I'm not quite sure how Boris Johnson turns things around. Now, that said, I don't give a toss about Partygate. I know that puts me in a minority with a lot of people, but I was much more concerned about the rules themselves,
yes,
which were ridiculous. They were ridiculous. They didn't make any difference to the spread of the disease. They didn't save anybody's life, and ruined our days. Also, did a lot of emotional damage to people who were losing loved ones or, weren't able to go to their own father's funeral or what have you. I mean, what I really blame Boris Johnson for is the lockdowns. And I don't care if he infringed on his own rules. I care about the rules. And at some point, we need to have a reckoning in this country over the fact that those lockdowns did not work. They were not epidemiologically effective, and they did enormous damage. So in terms of just the big story here, I'm relieved that Boris Johnson wasn't kicked out of office for going to a few parties. I just think that's a very sad, lame story to lose a leader over. But if people of conscience had got together and said, we've done our homework. The evidence was actually available before the second and third lockdowns were declared. This was one of the biggest historical mistakes ever. And it's not a good enough excuse that lots of other leaders made it. So we're going to make an example of you to make sure that we never make that mistake again. I could go for that, but not over Partygate.
No, and I completely agree, and I've been saying for months I wish Boris would say that this proves the rules were an ass. But when it comes to the alternative, Lionel, so what, you've got Starmer on one side with Sturgeon, he would have gone for the sorts of totalitarian lockdowns and vaccine mandates that we've seen in countries like New Zealand and Canada. You just know it. That's what he believes in. Then on the other hand, you've got Jeremy Hunt, currently the favourite to replace Boris Johnson, who was actually lobbying Nadine Dorries during the pandemic to follow the zero COVID policy of China and forcibly remove Brits who test positive and lock them up. So I just feel like Boris did
By the way,
Sorry,
that only sounds radical now. At the time, it didn't.
No, I agree. But it shows where it shows what his true philosophies about lockdowns are.
It shows his authoritarian nature.
Yeah.
And I was.
And if that's the alternative, so I don't think Boris got lockdowns right.
Worse.
I absolutely don't. But I just feel like unless Steve Baker's going to number 10 or Mark Harper, which, yeah, I'd be all for, but it's probably unlikely that that's going to happen. I
How
feel
about
we've got to be
David
careful
Frost?
about the alternative. Well, yes.
How about David Frost?
Lord Frost would be absolutely incredible. Of course, right now, he doesn't have a seat in Parliament. But, yeah, I would...
It's an inconvenience.
All for Lord Frost as Prime Minister, absolutely. But I think we need a little bit more time for that to happen. It's a very intriguing possibility to end with Lionel Shriver. Thank you so much for joining us on the big breaking news tonight. Of course, that Boris Johnson has survived the confidence vote. But it's time now to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. And with me to reveal theirs, my superstar panel, Carol Malone. Who is your greatest Britain nominee?
It's every single Brit who threw themselves heart and soul into celebrating the Queen's Platinum Jubilee this weekend. A grateful, emotional nation wanted to say thank you for 70 glorious years of service, devotion and duty, and by God they did. Streets, towns, communities came together. Me personally, I toasted the Queen so many times, I've forgotten. The whole weekend.
Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee.
Well, my greatest Britain is Paddington Bear, who made that amazing appearance alongside the Queen.
Oh, my God, we've got to look at it again. Let's look. I'm excited.
Perhaps you would like a marmalade sandwich. I always keep one for emergencies.
So do I. I keep mine in here.
Oh.
For later.
Oh, no, it was great. It was great. And Emily, your greatest Britain.
Of course, I've got to go for the star of the show, Her Majesty the Queen.
And I can't not choose the Queen.
We're having 70 years on the
Yeah,
throne.
I cannot choose the Queen. I agree with Carol, I agree with Benjamin, but of course, she's our greatest Britain because she got through that Platinum Jubilee weekend with verve and vigour, and what a sensational woman she proved to be yet again. Union jackass time, Carol Malone.
Man's every one of those stab-in-the-back Tories who called for a vote of confidence. These people are a random collection of non-entities. They're doing it for their own agenda. They're not doing it for the good of this country.
Benjamin Butterworth, your nominee.
Mine is FIFA, who dared to tweet for Pride Month this June that it will celebrate unity and inclusion in Qatar 2022, a country that kills gay people by law.
What hypocrites! And, oh, there it is, ridiculous. And Emily Carver, your Union jackass nominee.
That's a good one, but it's got to be Jeremy Hunt for me, mainly because of his revisionism over how he would have dealt with the COVID pandemic and the fact that it's been revealed that, of course, once again, he was saying at the start of the pandemic that we should follow China's strategy for dealing with COVID and lock people up, essentially.
Yeah, when, of course, in recent interviews, Emily, he claimed, oh, no, I would never have locked the company
Well, quite. He can't have it both ways, can he, Dan?
He can't. And I have to say, you've got the double today, Emily Carver. Jeremy Hunt is today's Union jackass, because I just want to remind everyone who's a little bit annoyed about Boris Johnson, doesn't think Boris Johnson is the right Prime Minister at this time. Think about the alternative. And we don't want the authoritarian Jeremy Hunt in number 10 Downing Street. Absolutely not. Emily Carver, Benjamin Butterworth, Carol Malone, thank you for being a fabulous superstar panel on this seismic political night. All of the analysis again tomorrow night from 9 p.m. Headliners next. Good night.
Hello again, I'm Ada McGibbon from the Met Office. Unseasonably strong winds are expected later this week, but for the next 24 hours, light winds, a lot of cloud, I think, but some sunshine developing, albeit with a few showers in places as well. Now, at the moment, high pressure resides to the north of the UK, with one low departing towards the North Sea, leaving a gap in between weather systems, only for areas of cloud and showers to fill it during Monday night. One area of showery rain affecting the English Channel coast, parts of Devon into central southern England, the Isle of Wight, Kent and Sussex by the early hours. Another area of showery rain pushing into the North Sea coast of northern England, southern Scotland. Away from those areas of cloud, some clear spells and a fresh start to Tuesday in